Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we explore the power of testimony. Jesse shares his story, though uniquely personal, is not tragically, unfortunately, uncommon in the recovery community. These stories are powerful. Now, dedicated to helping people in recovery, he is able to share insights and perspectives only a survivor could know. Jesse, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us your story.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Well, today I come in hopes of sharing my testimony to somebody out there that might need to hear this. My story might not be unlike many others, but it is unique to me. I did spend a lot of time when I was younger with a single parent, and not only a single parent, but a single parent that was abusing alcohol and drugs. And so I had a little bit of a taste for this lifestyle when I was young. Coming up into that, there was a lot of abuse, neglect, and some sexual abuse and some physical abuse, obviously a lot of emotional abuse. And so coming up in that environment for me really kind of set the table for what I thought would be what I was supposed to do, and because that's what I saw. I really saw that in my mom and all of the people that she had around us. And, there was times where she would bring me to the bar and I would see a lot of other people living life, drinking and having fun. And I thought that that's what life meant. So I could feel growing up, I had a little bit of a distorted view on how to maybe approach this life. And so going through some of the physical abuse when I was younger, it really kind of set the table for me to feel a lot of shame and a lot of blame and a lot of guilt. And that kind of put me into a position where I didn't have much value. A lot of things in my life didn't seem like it had a lot of value. My mom had a lot of people around me in the environment that exposed me to some stuff that maybe not a lot of people see when they're younger or experience in that kind of environment. So maybe some of the physical abuse, Peter, really put me into a corner. It did. It really did. So when I got a little bit older, I felt like maybe I had done something wrong in those times. So a lot of my testimony is I share is based in the fact that I don't want people to have a lot of blame or shame, because what happened when I was younger wasn't necessarily my fault at all. And going through some of the therapy that I've been doing has really, really helped. But my story does really start with some of that neglect and abuse when I was younger, because it kind of did shape the path that I was to take, growing up. And for me, my story doesn't really start or end there. It just is a part of my story. For me, I want to get to the point where uh helping other people realize that maybe if they've gone through that's not where we need to put our value or our worth, because we're so much more um we have so much more value than that.
Can I ask you a question? You talk about the shame and then you talk about recognizing that it wasn't your fault. Now, when you're growing up in that environment, you really didn't recognize it wasn't your fault. That's where the shame sort of is. As you look back on that, and maybe as you share the story with other people, if somebody is feeling that way, not empowered and weak and ashamed by what's going on, is that something that you feel is pretty consistent with when you get older? You're going to look back at that and say that's not your fault?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And one of the main things for me was to actually look back on that now and to come to the conclusion that that isn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. So that's a part of the moving forward, if you will. The part of the program that I work is trying to realize that, people in my life back then were doing things. They were living life the way they knew how to live life, right? So they didn't necessarily feel like they were doing anything wrong. But now that I look back on it and I look at it through the therapy that I've been doing now, has really, really shaped my beliefs. It's changed my belief that I didn't deserve that. I wasn't worthy of that. And maybe as we get older, some of the things we do kind of reflect that. So I had to make a decision that it wasn't my fault, and I had to come to terms with that. So, for me, moving forward in the trauma area, it's ongoing, Peter. I do weekly EMDR trauma therapy sessions, which has been about 6 months now. And that has really progressed my healing, if you will, in the right direction. So.
Well, and it's fascinating in a way because when we talk to professionals that haven't experienced the things you have, they talk about these problems being generational. And that's what you're saying is that people didn't know any better, but somehow you were able to turn the corner to move from the generational problem to saying, hey, I am Jesse. I am going to do this differently. Now we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk about that to sort of get a feel for how those moments sort of became intertwined in your life and you came to the realization that something had to change. Fair enough? All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We're going to continue our conversation with Jesse, and you don't want to miss this.
Well, because it's the best. And that's true because I've thought about that. I mean, definitely the fastest. And the biggest thing I hear most people talk about is the stability of it.
MediaCom's network is very reliable. We have a lot of programs in place that can monitor kind of issues that arise. That way we can fix them before they reach the customer.
Trust the pros. Get Extreme Internet starting at $9.99 a month for a year.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All MediaCom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your MediaCom account. Not a MediaCom cable subscriber? MediaCom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're speaking with Jesse about his journey through abuse, addiction, and recovery. In sharing his story, he hopes that putting himself out there can be a light in the darkness for people in recovery. Jesse, one thing I find fascinating is this idea that somewhere you stopped the crazy train and got off and said, I have to make Jesse different. And I don't know if that's something you know yet. I mean, this is a process of recovery that goes on for a lifetime. But can you sense some of those times or some of those events that helped shape that to help get you on this right path?
Oh, sure, Peter. Well, there was a time, and it was around 2011, I had hit rock bottom. For me, now rock bottom was shooting heroin, shooting methamphetamine, drinking alcohol, all on a daily basis. That was my rock bottom. I was using needles. I was hiding. I was married to a high school teacher at the time. She was coaching volleyball and basketball. I was kind of her sidekick, her assistant coach, and I was doing all this in the closet, mind you. Now, I wasn't an open user. Not a lot of people knew I had this problem. So rock bottom hit one day when I decided that I thought it would be a good idea to go and rob somebody. So that's my rock bottom in this story, Peter, is it took 6 to 8 months in jail for me to come down off all these things. And obviously, if you've ever been in jail of any sort or prison, they're not particularly helpful in these situations. They don't give you what you think you need in those positions. It's kind of a cold turkey sort of thing. So could you imagine coming down off of intravenous drugs, meth, heroin, and prescription pills in there too, but the alcohol. So as I'm sitting in there, Peter, I'm thinking, this is my life. My wife divorced me. She took the dogs. She took all my belongings, left me a few things here and there. My family had disowned me. And so there was a time in that jail cell, Peter, when I was looking at the wall, not knowing if I was here, there, sane, insane. I was just, I was a mess. I was a puddle. I asked a power greater than me that if this was true, if I was going to go through all this pain and all this things, that I wanted to be for the good and for the better, right? And that was a key turning point in my life, Peter. From that moment on, or soon thereafter, I started calling people that I knew would support me, and asking them for a little bit of support, a little bit of support, a little bit of support. And then that support turned into, hey, we want to get you out and get you into treatment. So that's what it took for me. It took about 6 to 7 months in jail, then to bail out, get directly into a treatment program. And then from there, it was just off to the races. But we have to put down, you know, we have to admit that we're powerless, right? That's our first step in my program, is that I have to admit that I'm cooked, I'm done. And I believe I did that in that point, Peter. That was my
How did you
turning
channel? I mean,
point.
let's talk about the range of emotions. At some point you might have had a feeling like, I want to punch these concrete walls and get out of here. Um, how, what was the range of emotions, and how did you not channel into anger and all those negative emotions? How did that, I mean, I know you talked about a higher power, and maybe I'm asking the question over again, but what were those days and moments like?
Well, I think it turned that anger and that frustration and that withdrawal, it turned into a faith, Peter. I did punch the wall a few times when I was in there. That's funny that you mentioned that. But you know, that's the way the anger came out in that point in time. I would never do that to myself now, but that anger turned into faith, and that faith turned into a drive, and that drive is a one day at a time truth for me, that I have to work this program today. Like, if I look back at yesterday and all the mistakes that I made, and maybe punching that wall in that cell and thinking about all the things that I had done, then I might not get where I need to be, because those things happened for me to be where I am today. Being where I am today, I have a heck of a story, but I really do feel like there are a lot of people out there that are going through the same thing, that are still sick and suffering. They might be in that jail cell themselves, trying to find this faith. Is it possible? I'm telling you, it is possible. You can do this. There is a way. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the steps let's at least start the conversation before we go on break, of those initial steps, those first moments going into a treatment facility.
Right. Well, for me, detox was quite important. So I had that time in jail to get the detox down, right? And so going into treatment, I was feeling pretty good. I had just gotten out of jail, and so the first things that they try to teach us in jail is that you don't want to go back to, or in treatment, is you don't want to go back to where you were before. So you have to start something new. You have to work a program. You have to have principles, a formula, if you will, right? So that faith that I talk about, it really came through in this 24 hours a day book that I got from when I was in detox, and it's from the Hazelton Foundation. But the 12 steps in that book was huge. It was pivotal because it gave me a basis. It gave me a formula. And so when we admit that we're powerless over alcohol, drugs, whatever bad way is whatever thing is putting you in this position, in that our lives have become unmanageable, you're literally taking the first step. You have to admit that, hey, I'm licked.
All right,
I'm licked.
that's fantastic. Let's take a break and come back and let's roll into that, because I think it'd really be interesting to hear how that hit manifested in your life. We'll see you all after the break. You don't want to miss this. We're going to continue our conversation with Jesse.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All MediaCom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your MediaCom account. Not a MediaCom cable subscriber? MediaCom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove.
You told me not to do drugs.
You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're with Jesse, who's dedicated his life not only to his own recovery, which is the only way recovery works, but also to helping others in recovery. Jesse, you talked about that sort of magic moment, miracle moment. I mean, you're there. You were smart enough, really, to figure out I need help while you were in prison. Because if you got out, you didn't. Your support system was probably going to be more drugs than anything else. One, how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, that's what we call in the program having had a spiritual awakening, right? Our 12th step. And that's what it was for me, Peter. It was a spiritual awakening. I had come to terms with the fact that if I wanted to live, if I wanted to survive, I needed to quit drinking and drugging. And that's what it took.
All right. So you now the day, what was the day that you walked out of prison like?
Well, getting out of there it was stressful because I know I needed to go straight to treatment. I needed to get this help. Now, there was a lot of reservations in my mind that maybe I could do this one more time, or I could just do it in moderation. You know, all the old similar haunts that come back in our mind to tell us that we can do this. But going out, I literally did this the right way, right? I went right into treatment. There was no downtime. There was no going to a friend's house to stay. I went right into treatment. And so when I got there, I had come off, I'm feeling pretty good and I was ready. I've had my spiritual awakening in jail. I punched the wall, the proverbial, got all my anger out, right? I got all that out and I'm ready. I'm willing, I'm able, and I'm ready. I hit the ground running it felt pretty darn good to be around other people that weren't in jail, that were looking for the same type of solution that I was, and that was to put down the drink and the drug for good.
What were some of the trials and tribulations you went through in the first days and weeks of being in this now newly found recovery, clarity of mind, maybe situation?
Sure. Well, coming into the house that I was living in, I had a really good house manager, Steve. I'll never forget certain people on my path, and he really made it pretty comfortable for me. But there was people. I was around several people, and it was co-ed, so we were going to church, we were going to meetings, and it was like you were back in life again. And I felt so alive. I felt so good that I didn't need a substance or anything to feel all this. But that honeymoon period doesn't last too long because you got to get to work. You got to get down and you got to pound the ground, and that's what I did. And there was no other choice for me but to do that. But I felt pretty darn good getting there, coming out of jail for that long, and it felt great.
So you had a portion of your life where you slipped down into the pit, and then this where you rose up out of the pit. How do you correlate coming up out of it to the way you fell into it? What were some of the key elements that have really changed?
Well, for me, it was coming to a belief that there is something greater there that could help me, because through going through alcohol addiction and drug addiction, it's like we're our own God, we're our own maker. We're making all these decisions, right or wrong, and we're doing all this, obviously where we're drinking and drugging to the detriment of our own life. But I had to make a decision that I have the power now to make these decisions to stop and to not do that. So realizing that you have the power within you to not have to go back, it's huge. It's a pivotal moment. So it's that same power that got us into the addiction and the drugging, right? Because you make your choices. Flip the coin. It's the same. You have the same self-will and the same choice to make to not do that. So it's just a matter of becoming strong enough and having the right, putting the right things into action and the right thoughts, and getting over some of the trauma and things that we've done in the past that make us feel some of that shame and blame that we can't do this, but we can, totally can.
Yeah, one of the things I
Absolutely.
want to point out to the people watching is that you didn't come to me say, "Hey, I want to do this show." We met randomly. It doesn't matter how it was. But one thing that became obvious to me was whatever energies were there, and it was sort of weird energy, public weird, not knowing somebody energy when you
Right.
run into somebody randomly. But I noticed that you were present in the moment, that you were in touch with your feelings, the good ones and the negative ones and the positive ones. It's like, we agreed to meet, and like, where were you, man? And I was like, we were just on two sides of a parking lot, and we're both suffering from a little bit of frustration. And then I see, and then you're like right in the moment solving a problem. It's like, okay, the moment's gone now. And it could have been awkward and bad, but no, it's okay, here we are, let's do this. And then I know you saw something I was wearing and you said, am I familiar with recovery? And we started talking, and I could see you in that moment, living life, regardless of what burdens and what you've been through. Now, that is not an easy process. We're going to take a break soon, but what, I know the realization you talked about is that you're not alone and a spiritual being. And, that's sort of fascinating to a lot of people because we're in sort of what people call a godless society. So a lot more people feel alone and stressed and not in command of their lives, and they don't know who to blame, but they often blame themselves on it, and it's with shameful experiences. Let's take a break because I want you to give people some advice and share some insights and inspiration. So we'll think about this, come back after the break, man. For those of you watching, you don't want to miss this. This may be the best of Jesse in the next few minutes. See you all after the break.
Get ready. MediaCom is now
mobile?
Well, not just mobile, but a 5G mobile network with reliability you can count on.
Really?
Just check out this map. Coast-to-coast coverage, plus hundreds of free extreme hotspots. It's an unbeatable network, and we've got some unbeatable prices, too.
But I love this phone.
Easy. Keep your phone when you switch. And guess what? You'll love it even more. MediaCom Mobile. Learn more today.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Oh boy.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we explored the power of testimony, Jesse's story, and his dedication to helping people in recovery. Let's see what insights and inspiration Jesse has to share with us. Jesse, keep the ball rolling, man. You've been doing great.
Well, I think we can, for me, it's that inner receptivity, right? I have to be receptive to what I'm working towards. And that was a totally different life from what I was used to. So coming from drinking and drugging and cheating and stealing and running and gunning, I had to literally flip my whole existence and my whole way of thinking upside down, if you will, but right side up. So what I did was I started working the steps, and I'm not huge into AA. I don't go to AA meetings. I used to go to quite a few. I did the 90 and 90 and all that. And it helped me in the literature and spiritual literature helped me. But what I'm getting out of that is that I had to change. I had to turn my life over. Literally turn my life over. And if you look in our big book or in our steps, right, in it says on step 3, you're making a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him. So there's no, you're not handcuffed to any certain belief or view. They're just asking you to make a decision to turn your will and your life over. And that's what I did. And I didn't know what God meant. I didn't know God was, but I knew in that jail cell, Peter, that there was something out there because it allowed me to survive and it allowed me to get through what I was in, even punching the wall. But so I make that searching and fearless moral inventory every day. I take it one day at a time. I admit to God, myself, my sponsor, the nature of my wrongs, right? And I am quick to admit and to make amends in those. And that's part of the 12-step or spiritual program that I work, we'll say, is that it's a one day at a time program, Peter. I wake up every day with a renewed, refreshed sense of, hey, what can I do today to make my life better? What can I do today to stay sober? What can I do today to help my family provide? What can I do today to not take a drink or a drug? And that's going to start with me and humbling ask God to remove my shortcomings. If you make a mistake, you make amends, you right the wrong. And what I tell my people, my sponsees is just focus on doing the next right thing in life, right? Doing the next right thing. That's what it took for me to live, this recovery and to help other people. And I'm literally just focusing on doing the next right thing. And it comes to me if you're doing that, right?
Are there any kinds of therapy that you really think are great for people to try out that they may not be aware of?
Well, sure. And I've been doing EMDR therapy, which I know I mentioned in this interview and prior conversation, but I do EMDR therapy with my therapist once a week. It's an hour session, and we're not doing it's not as intense every session, but it's helped. Therapy in general has helped me realize that a lot of the things that I went through in the past can be left there. Okay, I don't need to carry that stuff into the future with me, especially if I'm trying to stay present in the moment, right? So the technique that they're helping us with, it's basically geared towards healing us from that emotional distress and symptoms and the trauma that I went through. So I'd highly recommend EMDR therapy to anybody that's looking to develop that kind of outlook.
Now, for somebody watching this, what are some of the key advice you might give either to someone struggling with recovery or friends of somebody struggling with recovery?
Well, we can quicken or slow down the process of our spiritual awakening by who we surround ourselves with. What we're putting in is what we're going to put out, our self-talk. And truly, Peter, I really do hang my hat on the 1 day at a time program. So for me, I'm not trying to plan and prepare and prep 2, 3, 4 weeks into the future. I know that's going to be taken care of day by day. So I really, truly just try to stay in the moment. I try to surround myself with people that I want to either be like or help. I don't surround myself with the people that I used to surround myself with because that's where it brought me. I ended up going down a wrong road. So for me, it's living 1 day at a time, having that spiritual awakening to help other people, and continuing to work the steps every single day, and coming into alignment with what you think God needs or wants for your life. His will for us is most important, not me. I got me where I am today, or where I was, but with the help of God in this program, this 1 day at a time program, staying sober, right? It's gotten me here today, and I'm so thankful for that. So I'd encourage anybody to put down the drink or the drug and pick up a recovery program.
Well, and I thank you for being with us today. One quick one. We got just a few seconds left. You are accessible on social media. How can people find you out there and hear some of your wisdom and advice?
Yeah, sure. I am on YouTube and I am on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. It's called Second Chance Recovery, and my nickname is Irish Guy, so they call me Irish Guy. So Irish Guy at Second Chance Recovery, and I am also on Facebook too. But those two outlets, I really try to do a lot of my outreach on.
Thank you very much, Jesse. And thank you all for watching today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org and keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.